Hi everyone, today we're heading to Combat Mission Battle for Normandy with a game from round 1 of the Utah Beach tournament. Each round consists of a mirror match where you play the same scenario as both sides at the same time against the same opponent, and your score for the round is the sum of the scores from both of those games. This way, the scenario doesn't need to be perfectly balanced for each side, since you're going to be playing as both of them. In this one, I'm playing as the Americans, and the scenario is Crashing Carentan, a loosely historical scenario. The American side consists of a battalion of airborne infantry, which is at around 80% strength due to the casualties they've suffered in the days since the landing. Some of the companies are missing entire platoons, and some platoons might be missing squads. This is backed up by a formation of 4 Shermans, one of which has a 76mm gun, as well as off-map 81mm mortars and 105mm guns. Since I play the German side of this match as well, I know that the German defenders are a heavily depleted company, but over the course of the game they'll get an armoured car, a Panzer IV, and a Stug as reinforcements. Let's jump in and take a look at how the game went. The mission briefing had said that contact at the hospital is imminent, but it was perhaps a little bit more imminent than I expected, as the first thing that happens is my tank commander for the 76mm Sherman gets shot in the head. However, the panicking crew does pop smoke, which is going to conceal the troops that are now running out of the hole they just blasted. So it wasn't necessarily an entirely bad thing, although I would definitely have preferred if my tank commander didn't get killed right there. But yeah, my engineers blow a hole in the fence, which the tank was going to go through, and my infantry begins to move through it. A little bit farther on the left, I pretty much immediately spot some infantry in the side building, and my own infantry begins to fire at them as they move. A little bit later, the tank is also going to make the spot, and it's going to start putting some machine gun and some cannon fire into the building with a German squad in it. And another angle of the middle couple buildings there as my infantry start to move in, and I do actually take a couple casualties as there are quite a few Germans set up in the hospital. On this map, the objectives are in the hospital, in the Carentan town square, which you'll see a little bit later, and in the church. And as you can see, my pre-planned barrage of 105mm guns onto the hospital begin to come down. Into the middle section of the map, this is closer to the Carentan town square. I need to get into position, but none of the buildings had doors, or at least most of them didn't, so I blow my own doors to get my infantry in so they can see. The action around the hospital continues to intensify as more of my infantry are starting to get into the upper levels of the buildings and being able to see the Germans in the upper levels of the hospital. Those 105mm guns hopefully are going to suppress the Germans, or hopefully kill a bunch of them, so my infantry have an easier time getting in there. I blasted a hole in the outer perimeter wall to give my infantry a way in. But those engineers, I don't want them to actually engage like they are, so they were also given an order to quickly run away. So they fire a few shots and make their way out of there. Slightly to the right of that, I've also made contact with Germans in the buildings directly across the, well, I guess this part's not quite as clear, but there are a few trees. Heading towards the church you can see in the background there, and then the Carentan square up the final road. So I have 2 engineers that are moving forward to blast a hole into the row of townhouses. However, coming up the road, we spot some German infantry. So my infantry in the buildings are going to make quick work of them because they are just standing out in the open. And moments later, here comes another squad running around the corner out in the open. So once again, my infantry putting some fire into them. The firefight at the hospital continues on. The smoke is slowly starting to dissipate. Those 105mm guns still working to suppress the German positions, hopefully giving my infantry a chance to advance. But otherwise, for now, I'm content with letting them just fire back and forth across the buildings. It looks like I have fire superiority over the German forces, so I'm just going to let the infantry do their work and pour some gunfire onto the position for as long as I can. This is the far right flank of the map, the first time we're seeing it because it's been pretty quiet. I didn't want to run my infantry across the big open space, so I have just left them observing to see if they can spot any Germans in the surrounding buildings before they run out there. And in fact, they do spot some Germans who come running out into the open. Looks like they were trying to take position into the outer ring of buildings. My infantry make pretty short work of a couple exposed Germans lying in the streets. And finally, the machine gun position that is going to cause me some problems as I try to get up the road. One of the best ways to deal with a fortified position is to blow it up with a tank, so I'm moving a Sherman up to do exactly that. And before you jump in the comments and yell at me about using unit lock, at the time that I recorded this, I didn't really know what that did, but I do now. So please excuse the awkward camera motion as I try to follow this tank as it opens fire on that MG42. Over on the far left, looks clear enough for my Sherman to move up, so it's going to run over a small stone fence and take a position in the open field, hoping to get an angle onto some of the hospital buildings to the right of it. And finally, I'm pretty convinced that there's not a whole lot in these outer perimeter buildings, since in 2 different spots now I've caught German infantry trying to reposition to get to the outer buildings. So it looks like my opponent is not set up in any of the outer layer. He seems to be mostly set up on the inside and is trying to get to the outside. So based on that, I've decided to run the majority of a platoon up and start taking the outer buildings myself. The 76mm Sherman that had the commander shot at the start of the game has recovered its morale, so I'm going to start moving forward. Also, my barrage is starting to come to an end, so it's time to start getting more infantry in position to make an assault against the hospital. So first step, moving that tank up, hoping everyone is nice and suppressed so it doesn't catch a Panzerfaust, and then the infantry moving up with it. Over on the far right flank, more Germans in the street. I can only see one of them, but my infantry is going to make pretty short work of him. There is an MG42 that fired a couple bursts, but I didn't end up spotting it, so it will survive. Right, with the artillery barrage coming to a close and everyone in position, it's time to start the assault on the hospital. Except I mistime it, and the artillery is still coming down, so a couple of my troops are going to catch a bit of shrapnel. Everyone in the buildings is just pouring as much fire as they can into the hospital. And I'm sure you're seeing right now my troops are going around the side of the building. This is because I did not check to see if there were doors on this side of the hospital when I told my troops to assault into it. So they are currently running around the outer sides of the building to get to the doors on the other side. Unfortunately, there are Germans in the second wing there, and they just open fire with their MG42s into some very exposed Americans, and that is 3 squads pretty much killed immediately. So good lesson there. Check to see where the doors are before you try to assault a building. Slightly to the right of the hospital, another couple squads trying to gain some ground. Unfortunately, the building did have some Germans in it that I had previously not spotted, so I'm going to assault some squads directly into an occupied building. They do take a couple casualties, but for the most part they are going to make it inside. And finally, on the remaining half of the map, heading towards Carentan Square, I have infantry going across the open spaces on pretty much every side. So down where the Sherman is currently suppressing the MG42 position, and then the entire right side appears to be clear as I've been observing it for a couple turns now, and previously got some troops up. I ran a 2-man scout team over. So yeah, it looks like it's pretty clear of Germans, so everyone's gonna make that mad dash. And overall goes quite well. Right at the very end of the turn, I'm going to spot some Germans in the middle row of buildings. The assault on the hospital continues, with some of my squads having made it into the first wing. I've got another group trying to make it around the side. Unfortunately, they are going to have the same problem where I didn't check the doors, and a bunch of them are going to get killed coming around that corner by some MG42s. Also, an unspotted squad in the close front building there is going to open up as they come around, so another building that I thought was unoccupied, but it turns out it was occupied. The next wave is making it across the courtyard of the hospital. This time I have a pioneer squad going with them who's going to blow the wall and allow them to get in, hopefully a little bit easier. It's the way these buildings are laid out. It's kind of difficult to get into them. There's lots of angles you can get shot at. So in that front building, some stuff went down. Let's take a closer look at what exactly happened in there. So here's my troops coming to the building. Lots of Germans on the ground. You can see some of them are still moving. They are suppressed, not dead. My troops do not seem to have noticed that. The suppression will wear off and the Germans will start getting up. Firing some shots at my squad at pretty much point blank. And this brilliant gentleman throws a grenade, suppressing himself and killing one of his friends. A little bit farther over, the rest of the assault to the little building there. One squad did go down. However, the others are starting to catch up, getting into some more of the buildings to get some better weight of fire to suppress the Germans. Urban combat like this, it's all about getting as much firepower as possible onto the enemy to suppress them. So I just didn't have enough troops in this attack. And we're going to see that same thing play out here, where I have part of a squad go into a building, and they are going to meet up with multiple German squads across the street, which is going to give the Germans fire superiority, and they pin my squad and massacre them pretty much immediately. So I'm going to need to get a lot more troops into those buildings. And then our final look for this turn, Sherman sitting there. A German in the building is going to plink at the commander, who is going to immediately get the tank and all my infantry back onto them and kill them. While I'm still a little concerned about Panzerfausts and Panzerschrecks, I have moved up one of my Shermans with the second one quickly on the way. They are positioning themselves near the stone building and the kind of middle-ish building, and they're going to start putting some fire into the second row of the hospital. And a little bit more to the right of that, I got some infantry into the upper floors of a large building, and they're starting to exchange fire with Germans also in the upper floors of buildings. The casualties are starting to stack up, but continuing onwards into the hospital. We've got some troops sneaking up along the inside of the building there. And a little gap between the two, and they're going to hunt their way into that little entryway, which appears to be clear of Germans. Kind of nice. You can see I've blown holes in the outer wing closest to the courtyard and starting to get more and more troops in there. The Shermans appear to have cleared out all of the Germans in the next row. One of the Shermans that was shelling the hospital is going to move up. There's been an MG42 that I haven't really spotted, but I can see where the tracers are coming from. I'm pretty sure it's in that building in the bottom left. So Sherman's just going to put a few shells into that to try and suppress or take them out as well. And take two of my little row house assault here. This time I'm getting a lot more squads moving into the buildings at the exact same time, and we'll see how that goes. As you can see, I've now got basically 4 squads entering at the same time, all opening fire, and they are putting out a lot more than the single squad did. Still taking some casualties, but they've already pinned down the 2 German squads and are starting to rack up kills of their own. So there you go, fire superiority in urban combat. 4 squads, 6 squads now versus 2, and Americans are going to prevail. With the first wing of the hospital firmly under control and the middle section contested, it's time to start pressing onwards. So in the middle, I've got a squad moving up, and they're going to engage with some Germans in that last little segment. I have a pioneer squad running across the courtyard, and they are going to blow the wall. I'm blasting the wall because I'm not sure if I've killed the German defenders inside or if they're just pinned. So by blasting the wall, hopefully I'll continue to suppress them or kill them if they were close enough. Doesn't really look like there's anything in there, but as soon as that wall is breached and my pioneers are inside, they immediately come under pretty heavy fire from the last set of buildings in the hospital. So Germans still have some life in them yet for defending the hospital. Over on the right-hand side, I'm starting to move up another platoon. I'm going to try and occupy the set of buildings and do pretty much what I did in the other street, where I'm going to get those 3 squads to take buildings at the same time to put heavy fire down on any Germans that show up. However, my one squad that is already in a building does start coming under pretty heavy fire from a couple different spots. They don't take any casualties, though, but at least I know where the Germans are and where I need to apply my firepower in the following turns. And here's where I discovered what view lock does. So we're going to watch this Sherman drive up to its new firing position. I'm reasonably certain that I've cleared out any Germans that may be on the buildings to either side of this road up until this defended position by the hospital. So that's why I'm driving the Sherman up. It should hopefully be out of Panzerfaust range, and it's going to try and clear out those defenders with some well-placed 75mm high explosive shells, which it looks like it's doing a fantastic job of, which will make my infantry's jobs a heck of a lot easier. This section of the map is the one that gave me the most problems. Had a lot of trouble pushing through. There was a lot of weird angles and line of sight issues with all the walls and trees. And I had a lot of trouble getting fire superiority because I just didn't commit a lot of troops to the center area. So I have moved the 76mm Sherman up. It's hooked around from the hospital and come up this middle to try and give some help. It can't actually see that building that it's shooting at, so it's fire positioning right outside of it, and I'm hoping just the splash will do some damage or do some suppression. And finally back to the right flank, taking positions in the buildings so more of my infantry can shoot, and I've also moved a Sherman up. This one is in quite a bit of danger from Panzerfausts, given its close range, but I'm hoping that it just pins everything so fast that they can't get a good shot on it. Do take a couple casualties as entire platoon runs into one of the buildings on the side. That will give a little bit more protection to the tank because now I know there's nothing in the building immediately adjacent to it. Hey, I'm continuing to pile infantry into the buildings. Probably not a great idea because anything high explosive would kill a lot of them, but it does give me fire superiority over the Germans in the next building quite quickly. And I do have one of the paratrooper squads set to blow the wall between the 2 buildings, so momentarily, there it goes, and now they'll start spreading out into the next building. However, so many paratroopers, so much firepower, very, very quickly suppressing and eliminating the German squads that they're coming in contact with. I've also brought up my mortar teams to use as infantry because they are armed with carbines and I wasn't really having much luck using them as mortars. Back in Carentan Square, I'm moving a Sherman up to put some fire into the buildings on the opposite side of the square. However, it does take a hit from a hidden Panzerschreck, and I don't actually spot the Panzerschreck team that did that, so unfortunate for that tank. And continuing with my bad luck on tanks this turn, my 76mm Sherman, who's already missing the commander, takes a hit from an unknown attacker and loses the radio operator. The tank is going to back away. It doesn't have smoke, it's already popped it, so it's going to reverse out as quick as it can. And moments later, I do spot the offender. It is the Panzer IV that the Germans have received as reinforcements. Back over at the hospital, I'm continuing my relentless push. My infantry continuing to move up throughout the buildings, the Sherman providing some fire support, and the final German positions in the hospital are starting to collapse. My command post did spot some enemy infantry up in the church tower, and they begin to open fire on the position. The sheer firepower of all the paratroopers at close range is breaking the Germans. Squads trying to flee out the back of the building. And over towards the middle, that Panzer IV is moving up. Looked like it was going to try and chase down the Sherman, but then stops a ways back. I do have bazookas on some of those infantry squads, so I'm going to be hoping that it comes a little bit closer so that I can get bazooka on it. With the building seemingly suppressed and cleared, I move up a squad, and they catch some Germans fleeing out the building, and ruthlessly gun them down as they are fleeing. The squad is then going to move inside the building, where it finds that the remaining Germans have surrendered. Back towards the middle, the Panzer IV is going to move forward a little bit, and my bazooka is going to take a shot, which skims over the top, missing. And then a few moments later, an armored car is going to roll in. And my bazooka is going to take a shot at that, and also misses. My 76mm Sherman is moving back up into position. However, the Panzer IV seems to be heading in the direction of the hospital. My Sherman has moved back to block off the road, and it looks like the Panzer IV is currently reversing to engage it. So this is the Sherman that is missing a commander and a radio operator, taking penetration from the Panzer IV. It's going to get a shot off, and it is going to get penetrated in return and also penetrate the Panzer IV. And I believe in the background a bazooka shot hit the armored car. But as the smoke clears, the Panzer IV is still there, and it takes another hit from the Sherman, and this time it goes up in flames. Back towards the square, I'm now moving some infantry out into the open, and they're going to put fire onto the buildings on the opposite side. I believe that's where the Panzerschreck came from, but I'm not 100% sure. So infantry moving out so they have better angles. Unfortunately, the windows on these buildings wasn't able to see where they're currently shooting, so they did have to step out into the open. And over on the right-hand side, I do manage to start moving troops up to get a flank onto those buildings, and they reveal some German infantry in the alleyway and open fire on them. Overall, very successful turn. That 76mm Sherman is an absolute hero, getting penetrated by a tank shell, 2 tank shells, and still continuing to fight. So paratrooper squad blows a hole in the building and then decides to run around the front and go through the door instead of through the hole they just made, while the mortar squad continues to fire at the Germans that were in the alleyway. I brought up a Sherman, and it catches some Germans out in the open running up the road. Looks like they're trying to get a bit better of a defensive position. However, they're going to have a bad time as they get spotted by the tank and then by my infantry that have exited the buildings into the street. And over on the hospital side, things have quieted down a lot. There's some light resistance remaining, but the actual objective itself has been fully secured. My infantry start to hear a truck driving back and forth, and they are going to catch sight of it in the far back. It is an Opel Blitz, and they are going to open fire on it, getting some penetrations and killing the driver. My Sherman is starting to fire at the church, and the church itself is starting to come under mortar bombardment. The 81mm mortars that are off-map are going to start firing at it now. Over towards the hospital, I'm sneaking a squad up to take care of the last little bit of resistance. Unfortunately, they take a grenade, and most of them are going to go down. With the hospital secured and the square secured, it's now time to focus on the final objective, the Cathedral. To prepare for that, I've got 81mm off-map mortars starting to come down in a heavy barrage. The armored car that I think took a bazooka hit but survived. You can see it over on the right by the shed. It takes a direct hit from a mortar, and that is going to knock it out. But otherwise, it's just letting this barrage come in, so I'm prepared for a final push into the church. Right, and the conditions are mostly set, so I'm going to start moving up all of my infantry to prepare for that final push on the cathedral. So here they are, charging up the street, moving through the square. They're going to start taking positions in the buildings on the road outside the cathedral and wait for that barrage to finish. I'm also moving up my Shermans that I have remaining to put fire into the church as well to help kill and suppress any defenders. But for the most part, this map has been pretty cleared out, and you have the infantry there not meeting any resistance as they're moving in a large group up the streets. The company that was pushing through the middle section has suffered some of the highest casualties. I lost quite a few of them trying to navigate through the walls and buildings, but the remnants of them are now reaching a position where they can start firing at the cathedral, and they are going to do so as they start to make some spots of Germans in the buildings. Even though it seems like I've broken the German resistance, I didn't want to get any nasty surprises, so I do continue to send infantry into various parts of the map in order to check and secure them. And I do run into a Panzerschreck team who fires the Panzerschreck at my mortar, breaking them and causing them to flee. And I believe that's possibly the driver from the truck that jumped out and is in the building. So just trying to make sure I've cleared as much as possible so nothing sneaks up on me. And I begin the assault on the cathedral. So the assault coming from one side gets in no problem. However, at this point, I was pretty sure that the battle was over and most of the Germans were dead. I appear I was a little bit wrong and I got a bit sloppy. And a large mass of infantry are running to get into the cathedral, and there's no suppressing fire on the back half of the cathedral, and they are just getting gunned down by MG42s as they are attempting to get inside. So quite unfortunate, but definitely a mistake on my part there. I thought the Germans were done for. Fixing my mistake with the cathedral assault, I order several squads to stop where they are and start firing, so they all go to ground and open fire. Combined with the infantry that have made it into the cathedral, they make pretty short work of the Germans that were in the section towards the back there. Each of these segments is 3 floors, and the middle spire is 8 floors. So there are plenty of places for defenders to be hiding, and clearing it is going to be a bit of a nightmare, but I do have a ton of infantry ready to storm the rest of it. Heading up towards where the Opel Blitz is disabled, I have a Sherman moving up just to help clear anything else out. He does catch sight of an enemy infantry in a building, and he turns to fire and shoots the top of the wall. And then the final bit of German reinforcements, I do spot the Stug that came in, and the commander gets shot with a rifle, and the Stug crew is going to back away. At the start of the next turn, the Sherman takes another swing at the infantry squad upstairs and takes them out this time. Back at the cathedral, more and more infantry starting to move in. I've given squads orders to move up to the 3rd floor of all the outer segments and to the 8th floor of the central spire. So you're going to see them start to slowly spread through. I have them on hunt orders, so when they see an enemy, they're going to stop and engage. Whereas if they were with a quick order, they might try to continue on their path and kind of shoot as they go. Not so effective when they're indoors if they try to just run past some Germans on the stairs. But you can see them starting to get into the central spire there. And they are going to start taking some fire from German with an MP40. However, they take him out. So 1 German for 2 Americans. Not bad for assaulting into a building. But they're slowly going to continue their way up to the top. And back with that Stug, I've moved up a Sherman, just a 75mm Sherman. However, the Stug, not having a turret, has to awkwardly come around the corner to try and engage, and it takes a shot in the side armor. Hey, the Stug crew is going to bail out, and as they do so, the ammo explodes and kills most of the bailed out crew. At the Cathedral, continuing to make my way up. I think they're on about the 7th floor now. It looks like the first couple troops are starting to hit the 8th floor. So there we go. Cathedral is secure. And I continue to be a little careless. I knew there was a Panzerschreck up there. I thought the infantry had killed it, so I sent in a tank. I was incorrect. The infantry had not killed it, and I lose a Sherman for no reason. With the Cathedral fully under my control, I have infantry up in the upper level just to see what else they can spot. And they do spot some crews and some final stragglers of infantry on the far edges of the map. And they start to take some shots with their rifles at them. And I want some revenge for that tank crew that I threw away, so I got a couple squads heading over to clear out the Panzerschreck. One of the squads firing their own bazooka towards the Panzerschreck team, trying to take them out. But once my mortar team there gets closer, they're going to start engaging with whatever's inside the building. And sure enough, they do spot a German inside. This is a very scary sight. Panzerschreck aimed right at my squad at point blank, but they do manage to shoot him before he fires it. I've moved up some Shermans to the very edge of the map to hunt down those infantry that my guys in the Cathedral were having trouble shooting. The tanks also have some trouble getting machine gun fire on them. However, a 75mm shell is going to do the job. Find another small pocket of German resistance and send a Sherman and some infantry over to take care of them. And there is off-map coming down way off the actual map. Not sure why that is happening, but hey, it is. I am fully in the cleanup phase now. Just hunting down the last couple Germans that I've been able to spot. So one guy behind a fence and one guy in a building. My infantry are going to ruthlessly hunt down the final German. They've cleared out the other one in a building, and now they find this last crew member and shoot him as well. And with that, I believe that is all the Germans dead. So the game did run for 35 turns. However, at the end of turn 29, I had actually killed all of the Germans. So I sat there watching an empty map for 6 turns. But here is the final results. I end up with a full 2,000 points for destroying all of the Germans and taking all 3 objectives. I ended with 265 men okay, 75 men killed, 54 men wounded, and I lost 2 of my Shermans. On the German side, there are 0 men okay, with 119 killed, 65 wounded, 2 have surrendered, 2 tanks are destroyed, the Stug and the Panzer IV, the armored vehicle, which was the armored car, and also the Opel Blitz, also destroyed. And that's the end of round 1 of the Utah Beach tournament with me playing as the Americans. Huge props to my opponent, OgrishVet. Put up a fierce resistance. It was an incredibly fun scenario to play. And I should hopefully get the second part where I play as the Germans done hopefully in the next little while. So take a look for that. And thanks for watching, everyone.